Welcome to Tochi Stories. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notification because it will mean the whole world to me. Now let's get right into the story. Brace yourself. This is the part 2 of this incredible story. If you missed part, kindly check the pinned comment on this video below. You would see a link. Click on that link and you're going to see part 1. God bless you. Now the part 2 story begins. Obinna sat in the dimly lit VIP waiting lounge of the hospital, his elbows resting on his knees, fingers locked together as his mind spiraled. The events of the past 24 hours felt like a nightmare with no end. His heart was a battlefield, guilt, confusion, disbelief, all colliding at once. He had spent his entire life believing he was in control of his world, a billionaire, a king in his domain. But today, he was nothing more than a broken man, staring at the fragile body of a girl he only recently discovered could be his daughter. His head throbbed as he replayed the doctor's words. The blood match is identical. Sir, this only happens between biological siblings or identical twins. The pieces were there, scattered, sharp, and cruel. But the final answer lay with one woman, Adanna, the name he hadn't heard in decades. Without wasting another minute, Obinna pulled out his phone and dialed the number of his most trusted private investigator. Anita, he said, his voice low but firm. Drop whatever you're doing. I have a job. Find someone for me. Her name is Adanna. She used to work at Royal Crest Hotel 20 years ago. She's the mother of the girl in ICU, and she's the key to everything. There was a pause on the line before the investigator replied. Consider it done, sir. I'll deploy every resource. Obinna ended the call, leaned back, and exhaled deeply. His hands trembled, not from fear of not finding her, but from the fear of what the truth might reveal. Did she know? Did she try to reach me? Or did she hate me so much that she chose to disappear? The questions burned hotter than fire. Meanwhile, Obinna's thoughts kept drifting toward Anita, her face so innocent even in her unconscious state. Her quiet strength was unmistakable, even as machines breathed for her. And then there was Amara, the daughter he raised, the daughter whose world was also crumbling before his eyes. He had seen the shift in her, the guilt, the confusion, the terror of being replaced. He sighed bitterly. I've built an empire, but failed the one thing that mattered most, family. He didn't know if the truth would set them free or destroy them completely. But either way, the search had begun, and there would be no stopping until every hidden truth was dragged out from the shadows. Anita worked fast, faster than Obinna expected. Less than 24 hours after the call, Obinna sat in his office, staring at a file so heavy with information it felt like it weighed 1,000 tons. The investigator spread photos, documents, and records across the table. It wasn't easy, sir, Anita began, adjusting his collar. The hotel covered its tracks years ago, but I traced her last known address. She lived in a one-room zinc house in Adanna for over 18 years. Her neighbors described her as a woman who suffered a lot, always with one child. No husband, no support. He paused before sliding a faded hospital birth record toward Obinna. Obinna's eyes scanned it, twin female babies. Mother, Adanna. Father, unknown. His heart sank. His fingers trembled on the page. Anita continued, his tone lowering. Sir, I also found this. He placed a small envelope on the table. Inside were photos, grainy but clear. One showed Adanna, years younger, holding 2 tiny babies wrapped in cheap cloth. Another showed her sitting outside a tiny kiosk. One child strapped to her back, the other missing. There was a lot of gossip back then, Anita said. People said she sold one of her babies out of hunger. But nobody knew who bought the child. The trail went cold. Sir, based on everything we've uncovered, I believe the girl you found, Anita, is the twin sister of Amara. There's no doubt anymore. Obinna's vision blurred. He wiped his face, unsure if the wetness was sweat or tears. His chest tightened, fists curling as realization flooded him. She sold one of my children? For what? Food. To survive. The weight of it crushed him. As he flipped through each photo, each document, rage mixed with sorrow. How had this happened under his nose? How had life orchestrated such cruelty? And then another thought hit him, the most painful one. Did I unknowingly raise the child that was bought while her sister suffered in poverty? His pulse raced. His hands trembled more violently. He slammed his fist against the desk. Find her. Find Adanna. I don't care what it takes. I want her in front of me before sunset. Amara sat quietly in the hospital hallway, hugging her knees to her chest, her makeup smeared, her hair a mess, a shadow of the proud, polished girl she once was. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. Her mind was a prison of endless guilt and fear. Each time her eyes closed, she saw it again. Anita's head hitting the stone fountain, the blood pooling, the sound of her own scream. Her hands trembled as she stared at them, still imagining the bloodstains even though they were washed. What have I done? She whispered to herself, voice cracked, almost unrecognizable. For the first time, the mirror didn't reflect the queen of wealth and privilege. It reflected a broken girl drowning in regret. She glanced toward the ICU window where Anita lay, pale, frail, tubes connected to her body. How did it come to this? Amara whispered. Her mind flashed back to every cruel word she'd ever thrown at Anita. Even if you look like me, you can never be me. The words stabbed her now like 1,000 knives. Her chest tightened so badly she could barely breathe. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. This wasn't just some girl from the slums. This wasn't just a look-alike. This was her sister, flesh and blood. And now she might die because of her. But worse than the guilt was the fear of what this meant for her place in the world. If Anita is really my twin, what happens to me? The thought gnawed at her sanity. Would her father replace her? Would the world now see her as the spoiled mistake and Anita as the daughter who deserved the crown? Her heart raced. Her hands clenched. For the first time in her life, Amara wasn't sure who she was anymore. And deep down, beneath the guilt, was the terrifying seed of resentment beginning to grow. A dangerous, poisonous thought whispered, what if she wakes up and takes everything from you? And that thought terrified her even more than the truth. Adanna had barely managed to sleep since the news reached her. She sat in the corner of her tiny, crumbling one-room apartment, hands trembling as she clutched the phone that delivered her worst nightmare. A market woman had called, her voice shaking. Adanna, I don't know how to tell you this, but Anita, she's in the hospital, it's serious. For a moment, the world stopped. Her heart felt like it ceased beating. Her legs weakened as if the ground beneath her collapsed. Her baby, her only baby left, was fighting for her life. Without thinking, she threw on her only clean wrapper, grabbed her worn-out handbag, and sprinted out into the streets like a madwoman. Her slippers barely stayed on her feet as she pushed through traffic, asking anyone where St. Mary's Hospital was, her voice cracking with desperation. The journey felt longer than any journey she had ever taken, not because of the distance, but because of the storm raging in her chest. Her mind raced back to every moment she held Anita as a baby, every sacrifice, every night she went hungry just to feed her. God, not this child. Not this one. Please, not my Anita. She whispered the prayer over and over like a chant as her legs carried her faster than she ever thought possible. What she didn't know was that she wasn't just running toward a hospital. She was running straight into the past she had spent 20 years trying to forget. A past with a man whose face still haunted her deepest nightmares. As she stepped into the hospital, the receptionist barely finished asking her purpose when Adanna screamed, "Where's Anita? My daughter. Where is she?" Nurses turned. Patients stared. But she didn't care. Her wrapper flapped wildly as she stormed down the hallway, her eyes darting frantically, searching. And then, as she turned a corner, her breath caught. Through the transparent ICU glass, she saw her child, tubes in her nose, needles in her arms, machines beeping steadily. Her knees buckled. She staggered forward, pressed her palms to the glass, and let out a cry so broken it rattled everyone nearby. My baby, my baby. Her tears smeared the glass as her head thudded against it, sobbing as though her soul was being ripped apart. Adanna, the voice came from behind her, deep, familiar, and sharp enough to slice through bone. Her body stiffened instantly. Slowly she turned. And there he stood. Obinna. Taller, older, but unmistakably the same man who once ruined her. The man whose face she had hoped never to see again. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, time stood still. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of disbelief, anger, confusion, and something far deeper, something he couldn't even define. Adanna's breathing grew shallow. Her hands shook as the blood drained from her face. "No, it can't be," she whispered under her breath. The air between them was suffocating. Obinna took a slow step forward, his hands trembling at his sides. "Is it true?" he asked, voice rough. "Is she my daughter?" His voice cracked halfway, betraying the facade of a powerful billionaire. Adanna's lips trembled as hot tears streamed down her cheeks. After all these years, now you ask me that," she spat bitterly, her voice rising. Her hands balled into fists. "Where were you, Obinna? Where were you when I was crawling on the streets with your children, starving, begging, dying?" She pounded her chest, gasping between sobs. "You left me. You destroyed me." Her voice cracked so violently that nurses rushed to the hallway, watching the scene unfold. Obinna staggered back like her words physically punched him. His mind spun. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know," he shot back, his voice trembling. "You disappeared. You left without telling me. How was I supposed to know?" His hands raked through his hair in frustration. "Adanna, I didn't even know you were pregnant. If I had known," but Adanna cut him off, her eyes wild with fury and pain. Don't you dare stand there and act like the victim," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at him. "I looked for you. I begged. Your hotel. Those wicked people chased me out like a dog. I slept in gutters, carrying your babies, Obinna. I nearly died. You think I didn't try?" Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, sobbing, shaking uncontrollably. The hallway fell silent, not a whisper, not a sound. Just the raw sound of a woman whose life had been shattered beyond repair. Obinna knelt slowly in front of her, his own eyes glassy. "Adanna twins," he whispered, struggling to piece it all together. His hands trembled as he gripped her shoulders. "Are you telling me that Anita and Amara?" His voice broke completely. They're both ours?" Adanna let out a guttural sob, nodding slowly, brokenly. Yes, both of them. They are yours. They were both yours." Her hands covered her face as the shame swallowed her whole. The words she'd hidden for 20 years now spilled out like acid. I couldn't feed them. I couldn't. Hunger was killing me. I sold Amara. I sold my baby, Obinna, just so the other wouldn't starve." Her words shattered him. His chest tightened so badly he gasped for air. Obinna's hands dropped. His jaw trembled. His head shook violently. No, dear God, no." His hands clutched his head, his legs weakened until he collapsed fully to the floor beside her. "You sold my child, my daughter, to who?" His breathing became ragged, choking on guilt and horror. Adanna's body shook as she whispered the words that would destroy everything. "To your sister, your family, Obinna, without even knowing. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was your family. They just said they needed a child. I was desperate. I didn't know." Obinna's eyes widened. He rocked back and forth, fists pounding his thighs. No. His scream echoed through the hospital hall like thunder. Nurses gasped. Patients flinched. Even Amara, sitting several hallways away, heard it, and her blood ran cold. Her breath caught as her ears strained. What did he just say? Soul-daughter twins? Her heart dropped. Slowly, she rose from her chair, her legs shaking as realization started cracking through her like lightning through glass. No, this can't be what I think it is." Her footsteps edged closer to the voices, her world spiraling as the horrifying truth threatened to crush everything she had ever known. Amara stood frozen in the hallway, her heart pounding so violently it echoed in her ears. Every word she overheard splintered her reality further. Her hands gripped the wall to steady herself, but it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "Twins sold my sister me?" The words bounced around in her skull like a hammer, smashing every corner of the world she once believed was unbreakable. Her breathing became erratic. She pressed her palm against her chest, as if to stop her heart from exploding. No, 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 this can't be, this isn't real. But the voices from the other side of the hallway didn't lie. She had heard it clear, too clear. She wasn't the only daughter. She wasn't the chosen one. She was the one who was sold. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, gasping, tears welling uncontrollably. Her brain raced through memories. Every time someone commented on how strange it was that she looked like Anita, every snide remark she threw at her, every time she told her, even if you look like me, you'll never be me. The weight of her own cruelty slammed into her like a tidal wave. But worse than the guilt was the terror. Who am I? What am I now? Am I even who I thought I was? Her father's voice cracked from the hallway. I raised her. I raised the daughter who was sold without knowing. The reality felt like a cruel joke from the universe. Tears poured down Amara's face. Her hands trembled violently. A scream bubbled in her throat, but she couldn't let it out. Her mind was fracturing. Her world was fracturing. How do I face them now? How do I face her? How do I face myself? Her eyes darted toward the ICU window, where Anita lay, still unconscious, oblivious to the hurricane unfolding outside her fragile body. All this time, she was my sister, my blood, my twin. She hugged her knees tighter, rocking back and forth as her entire identity crumbled around her. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the princess. She felt like a mistake. Amara's confusion quickly turned to rage, not at Anita, but at Adanna. She wiped her tears hastily, her hands trembling as she stood, her breathing ragged. She stormed toward the hallway where her father and Adanna were still seated on the cold tiles, crying. Her footsteps were heavy, furious, and sharp against the marble floor. The moment Adanna turned and met Amara's eyes, her lips parted in horror. She knew immediately. Amara had heard everything. Amara's voice was a whisper of thunder, shaking with emotions she couldn't even name. You sold me, she suddenly screamed, the sound so raw that everyone within earshot turned in shock. Adanna scrambled to her feet, shaking her head frantically, her hands trembling. Amara, please listen. I didn't, she stammered, but Amara cut her off with a scream that echoed down the corridor. You sold me like a dog, like I was nothing. How dare you? Her hands flew to her chest, as if her heart itself was tearing apart. Do you know what it feels like? Growing up thinking I was loved, thinking I was wanted. And now I find out I was sold like garbage. Her knees wobbled, but rage kept her standing. All these years I thought I was special, that I was the chosen one, but I was just the child you sold. Adanna collapsed into sobs. I didn't know. I didn't know it was his family. I didn't know. I was dying. We were starving. I was going mad, Amara. I swear to you, if I had another way, but Amara wasn't hearing any of it. Her palms pressed against her ears, shaking her head furiously. No, no, no. Don't you dare try to justify this, she spat, her eyes blazing. You ruined me. You ruined both of us. You let me grow up thinking I was better, when I was just the one you sold. Her voice cracked painfully as her lips trembled. You don't get to cry. You don't get to pretend you're the victim here. You are the villain, Adanna. And I swear, I will never forgive you. Obinna sat there, watching the confrontation unfold, his hands trembling, his face pale, drowning in a shame so deep it suffocated him. Every fiber of his being wanted to scream, to disappear, to turn back time. How did I not know? How did I let this happen? His heart shattered as he realized that while one daughter was drowning in luxury, the other was drowning in suffering, and both were drowning in pain. Tears spilled down his face, his hands gripping his knees so tightly that his nails dug into his skin. I failed them. I failed both of them. The words echoed in his mind like thunder. His gaze shifted toward Anita, lying unconscious in the ICU, completely unaware that the war outside her window was about her. She suffered all her life, while I was living in mansions, signing checks, hosting parties, and she was probably sleeping hungry, barefoot, begging my own daughter. His throat closed. He stood slowly, wobbling like a drunk man, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of guilt. "I'm a monster," he muttered. I abandoned my own blood. I let this happen. God. I let this happen." His knees buckled and he leaned against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the cold floor, face buried in his palms. Nurses, patients, even strangers watched, some whispering, some stunned into silence. It wasn't every day that a billionaire broke down in public, completely shattered by a truth that money couldn't fix. Obinna's mind spiraled. How do I even fix this? How do I look Anita in the eyes when she wakes up? How do I tell her I failed her before I even knew she existed? His head thudded against the wall, tears flowing freely now. And Amara, my Amara, how do I heal the damage this has caused? How do I heal 2 daughters broken by my ignorance, broken by my absence, broken by a secret I never knew existed? The shame was unbearable, the guilt suffocating. But one thing was clear. Life, as he knew it, was over. It started as a whisper, then grew into a wildfire that swept through every news channel, gossip blog, and social media platform in the country. By the next morning, the headlines screamed louder than the cries that had filled the hospital the night before. Billionaire discovers abandoned twin daughter after 20 years. The daughter she sold, secret exposed. A billionaire's family torn apart by a mother's secret. News vans flooded the hospital entrance, their cameras pointed like weapons, capturing every face that entered or left. Journalists, some holding microphones, others holding smartphones, jostled for space. Security was overwhelmed as reporters bombarded anyone in a lab coat or hospital badge, demanding statements. Inside the hospital, the tension was suffocating. Obinna sat in the lounge, his hands shaking, his phone buzzing endlessly with calls from board members, investors, colleagues, and friends, all of them asking the same thing: is it true? His company's shares were dipping rapidly as the scandal went viral. But he didn't care. For the first time in his life, the man who had built empires, sealed billion-dollar deals, and sat with presidents felt completely powerless. His name was plastered across every screen, every headline. His darkest secret, one he never even knew existed, was now public entertainment. Amara, still sitting in a corner near the ICU, stared blankly at her phone as comments flooded her Instagram, her TikTok, her life. Fake rich girl. You were the one who was sold. Everything you had wasn't yours. The words were daggers, cutting deeper than any wound. Her hands trembled as tears blurred her vision. Her friends, the same ones who always hyped her, partied with her, envied her, now flooded her DMs with mockery, pity, or silence. The weight of humiliation felt heavier than her own skin. People who once bowed at her feet now watched her like a movie, waiting for her next breakdown, waiting to see if the princess would survive the fall. The soft, rhythmic beeping of machines was the first thing Anita heard. It sounded like the ticking of a clock inside a hollow cave. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy as bricks, and for a moment, she was trapped between dreams and reality, a dark fog where nothing made sense. But slowly, painfully, her senses started returning. The sterile smell of disinfectant, the stiffness of tubes in her nose and arms, the weight of her body that felt like it wasn't hers. And then the voices, faint, hushed, but near. As her eyes blinked open, the bright white ceiling came into focus. "Where am I?" she whispered, her throat so dry it hurt. A nurse gasped. "Doctor. Doctor, she's awake." Feet shuffled quickly. In seconds, the room was filled with medical staff rushing to check her vitals. Anita's head pounded as a flood of confusion overtook her. Her eyes darted around wildly. Machines, tubes, bandages. Panic surged. "Well, what happened?" she croaked, her hand trembling as she tried to lift it. But before anyone could answer, the door swung open, and standing there was Obinna. His expensive suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, his face hollow. Behind him stood Amara, her arms crossed, face puffy from crying, but her eyes unreadable. For a moment, Anita's vision blurred, confused as to why the billionaire she barely knew was standing by her bed like a family member. His lips trembled as he stepped forward. "Anita, my daughter." His voice cracked halfway, choking on emotion. Anita froze. Her mind raced. What? Daughter? What does he mean? No, that can't be right. Her eyes darted between him and Amara, her heartbeat accelerating wildly. She shook her head weakly. No, what are you saying? What are you saying to me? Her hands fumbled at the bedsheets as panic clawed up her throat. No, this doesn't make sense. Someone explain this to me, she cried, her voice trembling, her body shaking against the hospital bed. Silence strangled the room for a moment. Obinna struggled to find words. His lips opened and closed, his throat clogged with so many emotions he could barely breathe. Anita, I don't even know how to say this. I don't even know where to start. His voice trembled as he sat down slowly beside her bed. He took a shaky breath. You're not just someone I met. You're my daughter, my flesh, my blood. You're Amara's twin sister. The words left his lips like thunder, heavy, crashing, irreversible. The air left the room. Anita's eyes widened so fast it felt like her pupils would burst. What? No, this is a joke. This is a sick joke. This can't be real, Anita stammered, shaking her head violently. Her breaths became ragged as her vision blurred. You're lying, she whimpered. She turned her gaze sharply to Amara, whose face was unreadable, a perfect storm of guilt, rage, and confusion. Anita's lips trembled as tears spilled from her eyes. You knew? You knew, she shrieked, pointing a weak, trembling finger at Amara. But Amara didn't move. Her jaw was clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. Her hands were crossed, nails digging into her arms, her chest heaving. Obinna broke, falling to his knees beside her bed. I swear to you, I didn't know. I didn't know until the accident, until the blood test, until the truth came crashing down. Anita, please believe me, he sobbed, his hands gripping her fingers gently as tears streamed down his face. But Anita yanked her hands back as if his touch burned her. No, where were you? Where were you all my life while I suffered? She cried. You lived in palaces while my mother and I were starving, selling sachet water, begging for food. Where were you? Her sobs shook the walls. The reunion wasn't filled with hugs. It wasn't filled with joy. It was filled with pain. Raw, brutal, devastating. The moment Anita's scream echoed through the hospital room, something inside Amara snapped completely. Her body trembled, her lips quivered, and her heart felt like it was breaking into splinters she could never piece together again. Her fists clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms, drawing blood she didn't even notice. Twin-souled unwanted mirror, the words pounded in her head like a hammer against glass. Her breathing became shallow as her vision blurred with rage, confusion, humiliation, and something even uglier, terror. For her entire life, she had lived as the princess, the golden daughter, the crown jewel of the Nwokocha family. But now the world knew. I was the one who was sold. I was the one they didn't want. The moment her father reached for Anita's hand, calling her my daughter, Amara lost all sense of control. She let out a scream, raw, broken, almost inhuman, and stormed out of the ICU like a tornado. She shoved the door so hard it slammed against the wall. Her heels clicked violently against the marble floor as she charged toward the hospital restroom, threw the door open, and collapsed in front of the mirror. And there it was, the face. The face that no longer belonged to her alone. The face she once used to mock Anita now mocked her. Her hands slammed against the mirror. Once, twice, 3 times. Then, without thinking, she grabbed the soap dispenser and hurled it. The mirror shattered into jagged pieces, fragments scattering across the floor. Her sobs echoed off the tiles. She dropped to her knees, grabbing at her hair, screaming as if she could pull the pain from her scalp. Who am I? She screamed. Who am I now? Tears mixed with sweat as she trembled on the floor. Her mind raced back to every time she paraded her wealth, mocked Anita, flaunted her status, not knowing that the very person she tried to break was her own blood. The humiliation was suffocating. The fear was louder than her own heartbeat. And then the ugliest thought slithered in, if Anita is the daughter my father was meant to have, Then what happens to me? Her stomach twisted. Her fingers curled into fists. I can't lose everything. I won't. I won't let her take my place. But even as the thought formed, shame followed it, hot, burning, and suffocating. Obinna sat in the hospital lounge long after Anita refused his touch, her broken voice still ringing in his ears. Where were you while I starved? The words stabbed deeper than any knife. His eyes were hollow, bloodshot, his heart sinking further into a pit of shame he wasn't sure he could ever climb out of. How do I fix this? How do I undo 20 years of absence? How do I heal wounds I didn't even know I caused? The reality was crushing. And as much as his empire had taught him that money solved everything, today it felt useless. Completely useless. No currency in the world could buy forgiveness for a childhood lost. But Obinna was a man who didn't know how to give up, not in business, not in war, not in life. He stood up abruptly, wiped his face with both hands, and paced the floor. I will fix this. I don't care how, but I will, he muttered. Without another second wasted, he picked up his phone. Nduka, draw up a transfer deed. I'm giving Adanna and Anita one of the mansions in Banana Island. Fully furnished. I want their bank accounts set up with 500 million Nigerian nairas each. No questions. No arguments. Do it now. His voice cracked but remained firm. The investigator tried to respond, but Obinna ended the call. He wasn't done. Not even close. Moments later, he walked toward the ICU and met with Adanna, whose swollen eyes told the story of a mother broken beyond recognition. He knelt in front of her, a billionaire kneeling, as if money meant nothing. I can't undo the past, Adanna, but I can change tomorrow. Let me give you everything I should have given you 20 years ago. A house, security, comfort, freedom. His voice cracked as he spoke. And Anita, I know she may never forgive me, but I won't stop trying. I will spend every last breath making sure you never lack again. His eyes flooded, not out of pity, but because it's what you deserve, what you've always deserved. When Anita heard the words from a nurse that Obinna had transferred a mansion, a car, 500 million Nigerian nairas into her name, her body went cold. Her hands trembled, but not from excitement. Not from gratitude, from rage, from heartbreak. She stared blankly at the nurse, whose face carried an awkward, pitiful smile, expecting her to be overwhelmed with joy. But instead, Anita let out a bitter, shaky laugh that slowly morphed into sobs. Is that it? She whispered. Her fists clenched the bedsheet. Is that all it takes? A mansion? Money? A shiny car to erase 20 years of being ignored? 20 years of suffering? Her voice rose, cracked, and broke. She shoved the bedsheets aside, ripped the 4 from her arm despite the nurse's protest, and forced herself to her feet, wobbling. She didn't care. Pain be damned. She staggered toward the window, breathing heavily, her arms crossed over her chest. Her mind flashed back to selling sachet water in the sun, walking barefoot to school, watching her mother cry at night because there was no food. Her lips trembled as she whispered, You didn't care when we were sleeping hungry, when we were being mocked, when my mother begged strangers just to feed me. Now you show up, now you call me daughter, because a stupid blood test said so. Her voice was sharp, painful, and raw. Turning sharply, she stared at Obinna, who had just walked into the room, hope flickering on his face. Her glare could slice through concrete. Take it back. Her voice was ice. Take your mansion. Take your money. Take your cars. I don't want it. I'm not for sale. You don't get to buy me now, because I became visible to you. You don't get to erase the years I lived invisible. Obinna staggered as if her words were physical blows. Tears spilled from his eyes. Anita, please, he whispered, but she shook her head. No. You abandoned me before you knew me. Don't buy me now. And with that, Anita turned her back to him, choosing her dignity over diamonds. Adanna sat on the floor of the hospital's waiting room, her back pressed against the cold wall, knees tucked to her chest, her face buried in her arms as violent sobs shook her body. Her mind raced with 1,000 memories, none of which could give her comfort. The humiliation, the pain, the guilt, it consumed her like wildfire. everywhere she turned. It felt like the walls of her past were caving in on her. She had fought so hard to keep this secret buried, fought so hard to survive, and now it had exploded into a storm so devastating it had left nothing untouched. Her hands trembled as she clutched her head, the same question spinning endlessly in her mind. Why did life do this to me? Why did it force me to choose between my children and survival? Her vision blurred with hot tears as memories from 2 decades ago came flooding back. She remembered the day she sat under that mango tree, staring at her twin daughters, both crying from hunger, while her own stomach growled painfully. She remembered the agony of choosing which one to give away, how she told herself it was for their good, how she convinced herself it was to save at least one life. But now, standing in the ruins of that decision, she realized she had lost them both. One hated her for selling her. The other now hated her for lying about it her entire life. Her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she rocked back and forth, whispering apologies no one was ready to hear. I am sorry. I am sorry. I'm so sorry. God, forgive me, my daughters, forgive me. Nurses passed, some stopping to offer a tissue, others whispering sympathetically. But it meant nothing. Nothing could soothe this kind of pain. In her heart, she wasn't just a mother anymore. She was the villain in both of her daughters' stories. Her lips trembled as she stared at the doors that separated her from Anita and Amara. How do I fix this? How do I undo the damage of 20 years? But deep down she knew. Some wounds don't heal. Some choices carve scars so deep they never fade. And sitting there on that cold hospital floor for the first time in her life, Adanna wished she had died the day she made that decision. Because this pain, this shame, this devastation, it was worse than death. Amara's eyes were swollen, her hair disheveled, and her fists clenched so tight her nails pierced her skin, but she didn't care. Her entire world was upside down, shattered, flipped, and stomped on. But amidst the ruins, something fierce was brewing inside her. Not sorrow, not regret, but rage. A kind of rage she had never known before. She thinks she can take everything, Amara seethed, pacing her father's lounge like a lioness ready to strike. Her eyes darted toward the television, where the news still flashed the scandal. Billionaire's hidden twin daughter sparks national outrage. Her teeth clenched. They're calling her the real daughter, the long-lost heir, like I'm just a mistake, like I don't belong here. The more she thought about it, the hotter her blood boiled. No, I won't let this happen. I won't let her take my life, my place, my father, my name. Her fists pounded the edge of the table. Her breathing grew shallow. The whispers on social media were already unbearable. People mocking her, former friends unfollowing her, sponsors withdrawing deals. Her reputation, her identity was falling apart. She had spent her entire life being the girl everyone wanted to be. Now she was a meme, a headline, a joke. Her pride shattered, her insecurities spiraled. And just beneath the heartbreak was a voice that whispered cruelly, if you don't fight now, you'll lose everything. Her eyes flashed with a dangerous determination as she grabbed her phone and made a call. Get the family lawyer on the phone, she barked. Tell him to come to the house. Now, her lips trembled, but her jaw remained locked. If Anita thinks she can walk in here, where my face, and take my life, she's mistaken. She can be the poor girl. She can be the charity case. But she will never be me. Never. Her voice cracked on the last word, but her fists tightened even harder. This isn't over. Not even close. If blood made us sisters, then this battle will be the war that tears us apart. The next morning, the mansion gates swung open as Obinna returned from the hospital, exhausted, drained, and desperate for answers. Not about the scandal, not about the media, but about his daughters. His heart weighed heavily with the realization that both were spiraling. One was broken by betrayal, the other poisoned by pride. He stepped into the living room only to find Amara sitting at the center of the sofa, arms crossed, dressed in all black like she was attending a funeral, and maybe, in her mind, she was. The funeral of her old life. The death of everything she thought was hers alone. She stood slowly, her eyes narrowing. Dad, she said, voice clipped, cold and formal. We need to talk. Obinna sighed, his hands running through his hair. Amara, I don't have the strength for this. Not now, but she didn't let him finish. Then find the strength. Because this isn't going away. Not unless we handle it. Her tone was sharp, cutting. That girl. Her voice spat the word like venom. She cannot come here and think she'll just become me. She's not me. I don't care what DNA says. She's not me. Her eyes burned. And I won't let her destroy everything I've built. Everything we've built. Obinna's eyes closed. His chest tightened. What have I done? How did we get here? He sat slowly, rubbing his temples. Amara, this isn't a competition. But her laughter was bitter. Isn't it? She snapped. Look around, Dad. Look at the headlines. Look at the world. It's already a competition. Everyone's comparing us. Everyone's asking who deserves this family, this house, this name. Her voice cracked but hardened again. So fine. If it's a battle of blood, then let's fight. But understand one thing, she stepped closer, her face inches from her father's. She may be my sister by blood, but I will never let her take my place. Never. Obinna's hands trembled. His heart shattered. The battle lines had been drawn, not by the world, not by the media, but by his own daughters, his own blood. Obinna sat at his office desk with his head buried in his hands, drowning in the chaos he once believed only happened to broken families, not his. His phone kept buzzing, but he ignored it. Shareholders were panicking. Reporters were relentless. His sister, Neka, the woman who unknowingly raised a child that wasn't hers by birthright, but still hers in every way, had sent him a message saying, "Sort out your home before your house becomes ashes." The words pierced deeper than any lawsuit. But what haunted him wasn't the media, the collapsing business, or the whispers. It was the realization that fatherhood, in the end, wasn't about DNA. It wasn't about blood. It wasn't even about money. It was about showing up, and he had failed. For 20 years, he didn't show up for Anita. And now, he didn't even know how to show up. How do you become a father to a child who learned to survive without you? How do you heal wounds created not by your hands, but by your absence? His thoughts spiraled until a knock at the door interrupted. Amara stepped in, not the usual confident Amara, but a version even more dangerous. Her eyes were cold, calculated, and in her hands, a brown envelope. What's that? Obinna asked warily. She dropped it on his desk with a thud. Her voice was steady, but sharp enough to cut steel. A court-filed demand. A DNA test. I want to know if I'm really your daughter. Because, right now, I don't even know who I am anymore. Silence swallowed the room. Obinna's mouth opened, but no sound came. His eyes widened in horror. Amara, you don't mean that, but she folded her arms. Oh, but I do. You think this is about Anita? No. This is about me. Because for the first time in my life, I don't know if I'm even real. I don't know if this life was even meant for me, or if I was just a mistake sold into a family by accident. Her voice broke slightly, but her jaw remained tight. I need to know, Dad. I need to know if I even belong here. Obinna stared at the envelope like it was a ticking bomb. And, in many ways, it was. Not a bomb of destruction, but of truth. A truth that would either shatter what little remained of this family, or destroy it completely. The next morning arrived heavier than any morning this family had ever known. The hospital waiting room was tense, suffocating. Everyone was there, Obinna, Amara, Anita, and Adanna, seated on opposite sides of the room like enemies in a courtroom. No one spoke. No one dared breathe, too loud. The court-approved DNA officer stepped in, his white lab coat pristine, holding a small silver briefcase. He cleared his throat. We are here to conduct the legally filed DNA paternity confirmation test as requested, he announced. His eyes darted between the two girls, mirror images of each other in face, but worlds apart in everything else. Amara's fingers trembled slightly as she rolled up her sleeve, trying to mask the war raging inside her. Her mind raced with thoughts she didn't dare speak. What if I don't belong here? What if I was never his? The technician drew her blood, labeled the vial carefully, and nodded. Anita followed next, calm on the surface, but only because she was numb now. Nothing surprised her anymore. Betrayal had become her shadow. When the technician finished, he packed everything with robotic precision, then stood. The results will be ready in 72 hours. His voice was professional, clinical. But to the 4 people sitting there, his words were the sound of a guillotine being sharpened. As the technician walked out, silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't just uncomfortable. It was suffocating. Obinna stared down at his hands, realizing that for the first time, even his wealth couldn't control this outcome. Amara stared at Anita, her face hard but her eyes screaming, "What happens if you take everything?" And Anita sat quietly, looking out the window, wondering if God was watching this tragedy unfold. And if he was, why hadn't he stepped in yet? And then slowly, the camera of life zoomed out, leaving them all in that waiting room of truth, pain, and questions. To be continued. Don't forget this is the part 2 of this incredible story. If you missed part, kindly check the pinned comment on this video below. You would see a link. Click on that link and you're going to see part 1. God bless you. Thank you for watching this video. What did you learn from this story? Drop it in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel Tochi Stories for more.